just quickly going through today's committee members. Really quickly, these are the people that helped make today's event possible. I want to give them a good thanks. Next slide, just because we're on time. Yeah, thanks. Today's agenda, we're going to go through remarks by MPP Daisy Y, followed by opening address by Marisa Sterling, then 30 by 30 presentation by Helen and Bob, followed by the first breakout session, then the keynote speech by Cassondra, then the second breakout session, then the Q&A session, followed by the introduction of the next engagement session, and we'll be ending the day with closing remarks. So I want to introduce MPP Daisy Y today. Daisy Y is a resident of Richmond Hill, was elected as a member of Provincial Parliament for the riding of Richmond Hill on June 7th, 2018. Daisy has been serving the community for over 25 years prior. In addition to being a local business owner, Daisy has sat on various boards, including York Regional Police Services, Mackenzie Health, Central Community Care Access Center, Easter Seals Society, and SEDI, Self-Employment Development Initiative. She was also chair of the board of Richmond Hill Chamber of Commerce, vice chair of the board of the Markham Board of Trade, and past president of the Markham, Richmond Hill, and Bonn Chinese Business Association. Daisy had also served on the board of the Lighthouse, the Character Council of York Region, and was the deacon of the Richmond Hill Christian Community Church, where she served as a past principal of the Children's Sunday School, caregiver for the Special Need Group, and Cancer Support Group. Daisy is a recipient of the Civic Leadership Award from York Regional Police Canada 150, Women of Distinction Award from the City of Markham, and the Queen's Golden Jubilee Memorial Medal, as well as the Diamond Jubilee Medal. Daisy is married and has 4 children and 6 grandchildren who give her much joy, encouragement, and support. Along with politics, Daisy enjoys serving her community and church alongside her husband, Albert Y. Please give me a hand on welcoming Daisy Y.
Thank you, everybody. And it is amazing to see like all the young organizing committee. You got a big future in front of you. Again, introducing myself, I am Daisy Y. I am the member of Provincial Parliament for Richmond Hill, and I'm very proud to be a female MPP, and I hope that I can inspire other women, showing them that they can do everything they aspire to do. While improving the representation of women in engineering from 17% to 30% by 2030, it is an incredible initiative by your organization. As a woman, I'm surprised to hear that this percentage is actually pretty low right now. So by improving it to 30%, I'm happy for you that you have this initiative and you're working towards that goal. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage young women to consider engineering field. Be confident with your abilities. If you are strong in math and science, you can overcome any bias of stereotype related to the field of engineering. In fact, that is why our government is making changes to strengthen the publicly funded education to better prepare the students with skills, knowledge, and confidence they need to succeed for the future, whatever path they choose. In our plan, Ontario students will learn about STEM from kindergarten to grade 12 by studying and applying science, technology, engineering, and math in the real-world context. So while we are preparing the students, I'm seeing all of you are working towards this. We are seeing that what we're doing right now will help the students develop their transferable skills to meet the demands of today's global economy and society. This is also assist in preparing our female students for a possible career in engineering. Some may believe that men are mathematically superior and better suited for engineering jobs. This is a stereotype that can negatively impact on the performance of women. Do not let it affect you. Engineering may be a male-dominated field, but do not let this deter you from overcoming these difficulties to find a fulfilling and rewarding experience in the engineering profession. I'm sure a lot of you who may already be in the engineering field agree with me and find that this is fulfilling and rewarding. Well, I know that you've got a very exciting time ahead of you, and I would not want to take up too much of your time, except that I would like to leave you with a quote by Gloria Steinem. She said, "A gender-equal society would be one that the word gender just does not exist, where everyone can be themselves." All the best to all of you, and have a great event tonight. I have to excuse myself. Pardon me, I was hoping that I can join you all for the rest of the evening, but all of a sudden there is a caucus meeting called for at 6:15. So I better leave this now and get on to the next meeting. But have a successful meeting. Nice meeting all of you. Go for it. Thank you all.
Thank you, MPP Daisy Y. Without further ado, we're going to go on to our next speaker. We have Marisa Sterling, who's the PEO President. Marisa Sterling is a distinguished engineer and academic administrator. She has over 20 years of experience working and volunteering in the engineering field in both the private and public sectors. Most recently, she served as elected Vice President of PEO and is currently the Assistant Dean and Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Professionalism at the University of Toronto's Facility of Applied Science and Engineering. Marisa Sterling previously worked in the consumer product industry in R&D and brand management, and for PEO as a management of enforcement and lead of the repeal of the industrial exception. Her extensive strategic and operational stewardship has positively impacted students and engineers. Please help me welcome Marisa Sterling.
Hi, and good evening, everyone. As you heard, I'm Marisa Sterling. I'm a chemical engineer and currently president and chair of PEO. On behalf of PEO Council, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me to the East Central Region 30 by 30 member engagement webinar. A special thank you to my friends and colleagues of the PEO chapters involved in organizing tonight's event. I welcome everyone who are guest speakers, and a special welcome to our last speaker, MPP Daisy Y. I really want to thank her for being interested in and engaging with the work of Ontario's 85,000 professional engineers who serve the public interest on behalf of your government through the Attorney General. Thank you for inviting me to this important event focusing on Engineers Canada 30 by 30 initiative to increase the representation of women in engineering from 17% to 30% of newly licensed engineers by 2030. So, where are we currently? According to Engineers Canada's most recent statistics, as of December 31st, 2018, women engineers made up just over 18% of total Canadian license holders. This also squares with PEO's 2019 totals of newly licensed engineers at 18%. While this is certainly progress from 30 years ago, when women made up only 5% of Canadian engineers, we clearly have a ways to go if we're to meet our 30 by 30 goals to reach the 30% figure that's widely accepted as the critical mass for self-sustaining change. The business case for gender diversity in engineering, indeed in all professions, it is clear. The research shows that if you're looking for excellence, if you're looking for the best possible results, gender diversity is critical. Gender diversity is linked to employee satisfaction. It's linked to improved governance and innovation. It's also associated with financial benefits including a positive impact on business value. And of course, it opens up the talent pool considerably. We need to remember that women are not a minority group, but an underrepresented percentage of the engineering population. And we're not a singular individual. By focusing on those who identify as women, you'll support those who identify as different races, ethnicities, different sexualities, gender identities, and so forth. Let me make this a bit personal. I studied engineering when there were only 15% women graduating from engineering. And here are some of the places that bias may enter and make the education, work, and license experience a challenge for young women. Let's think about young women in higher education who are looking for study partners and supporting groups during their university education. Let's think about young women who are looking to create networks and get advice on how to deliver effective interviews. Let's look at young women who are looking for the chance for great projects that give them great engineering work experience with their employers. And let's look at how we know that there is bias in language that is used in either how interpretation is of people's resumes and also how job ads are written. So these are just a few examples of where we know that bias can occur in the system and can particularly impact women. While PEO has no control over how many women apply for PEO licensure, it's in both society's and the profession's best interest to achieve gender equity. And this is summed up in PEO's 30 by 30 Task Force Manifesto, which I'd like to quote now. The 30 by 30 initiative speaks directly to this trust between society and the regulator. If we, as a self-governing profession, are not reflective of the society on whose behalf we serve, then society has every right to question our ability to equitably regulate. Society recognizes that gender equity is a goal that a just society should strive towards. The evidence is irrefutable that a more equitable society is a healthier society. Most other major professions have either achieved gender parity or made great strides towards it. With a current gender ratio of less than 1 female in 5, engineering is an anomaly. But the good news is we're on the right track to achieving gender equity in engineering, as evidenced by this event tonight and the work of PEO's 30 by 30 Task Force. On September 29, 2017, PEO Council formally sanctioned the 30 by 30 initiative and went on to form the task force and develop an action plan based on Engineers Canada's 30 by 39 promising practices. Last year, the task force held awareness and action planning sessions with PEO's academic experience requirements and licensing committees, with universities, with employers, and with chapters. Some notable successes from these sessions include a presentation to the Council of Ontario Deans of Engineering, resulting in the deans agreeing to formally endorse 30 by 30. Developing relationships with over 20 engineering employers across several sectors, including mining, hydro, automotive, consulting engineering, government, defense, biomedical, transportation, and energy. And a session to formally educate chapter leaders on 30 by 30, as well as potential chapter activities. This was followed up by an action planning session to discuss how chapters could move forward and host their own 30 by 30 activities. And that's why we're here tonight, with representatives from PEO's 6 East Central chapters: Willowdale Thornhill, York, East Toronto, Scarborough, Lake Ontario, and Simcoe Muskoka. Chapters have a role to play in helping meet 30 by 30 objectives, from promoting STEM education at local schools, encouraging young women to pursue engineering careers during National Engineering Month events, to providing scholarships to local engineering students, and crucially, providing licensure assistance programs, LAP. These programs are so valuable in providing mentors to help engineering interns, both men and women, in navigating the licensure process and ultimately earning their license. As Canada's largest engineering regulator, it's critical that PEO and its chapters show leadership on 30 by 30. It's now 2020, and we have 10 years to increase women's license holders from 18% to 30%. Obviously, we have much work ahead of us, but I'll leave you with some encouraging statistics that suggest there are more women engineers on the way. In 2017, there were just over 6,500 female students enrolled in Ontario engineering schools. According to the Ontario Network of Women in Engineering, ONWE, women make up 30% or higher of enrollment in first-year engineering programs across most of Ontario's schools, a statistic that's steadily growing. And ONWE reports that of girls taking grade 12 physics, 40% go on to apply to engineering programs. So between our work at both provincial and chapter levels and increasing interest in STEM among young Canadian women, I think 20 by 30 will be a time for celebration among Canadian women engineers. And I hope in 10 years we can celebrate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marisa, for that wonderful address. That segues perfectly onto our next two presenters who are from the PEO 30 by 30 task force. If we can go to the next slide. I'm very pleased to present the first of our two PEO 30 by 30 task force speakers. The first is Helen Wojcinski. She is an award-winning professional engineer and organizational behavior expert. She operates her own change management consulting practice, and she's the president of Wojcinski and Associates Limited. She's an ardent advocate for over 25 years for gender parity and the full participation of women in the engineering profession. She currently serves on the Engineers Canada's Equitable Participation in the Profession Committee, and most notably, she is the chair of PEO's task force on 30 by 30 initiative, which is Engineers Canada's goal that 30% of newly licensed engineers in Canada are women by 2030. After Helen's address, Bob Dony will be presenting. Bob Dony is a PhD, is an associate professor in the School of Engineering at the University of Guelph. He has served many roles on PEO Council, including president of PEO Council from 2017 to 2018, as well as vice president and councilor at large positions. He has a long history of volunteer leadership with the PEO and the engineering community. He has been a past chair of both PEO's academic requirements and legislation committees. He also represents PEO on Engineers Canada's Canadian Engineering Accreditation Board. Moreover, he is a member of the PEO 30 by 30 task force. So now, without further ado, I will hand the floor over to Helen, who will start the 30 by 30 presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. So our technical expert, can you hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Good.
All good here, Helen.
Okay, good. Sometimes these things are garbly. Thank you very much, East Central Region, for inviting me and Bob tonight from the task force to speak to you about the 30 by 30. Marisa just did a very fulsome and a very nice segue for what we're going to cover off and set the stage for us. As you can see, it says Engineers Canada 30 by 30 initiative. So really this is a national initiative. It starts at the top with Engineers Canada. All 12 regulators across Canada have signed on, and as Marisa has said, PEO Council approved or endorsed the 30 by 30 officially in 2017, and that was under the presidency of Bob Dony. So Bob has to be careful that you get what you wish for, and because he endorses the president, he is now a member of our task force. So we really appreciate that support that he gave and the leadership that he gave to this initiative to get it off the ground at the PEO level, the local level. Our task force is made up of just 4 members that work pretty hard, and so at the top there, that's me, the chair of the task force. We also have Christian Bellini, who is your president of elect. And we also have Bob, as I talked about, who's a former PEO president. And then also Lola Hidalgo, who is a former counselor on PEO Council. So that's our task force membership. And just by chance, it happened to be 50% women and 50% men. We did not plan it that way. It was just a call out to PEO counselors who was interested, and that's who signed up. But what's really important about our task force is that there's a lot of visible leadership in the profession. Former presidents and counselors and your president-elect for next year. And so that's really a very positive sign. PEO is taking this initiative seriously. So tonight, just a very quick overview, equity and engineering and why that's important, a little bit about the Engineers Canada Initiative, which Marisa's already given us a good segue for. PEO, what PEO actually going to do about it, and more specifically for you, what are the actions that are proposed for chapters and some of the metrics for the chapters. And then this is a good segue as well for what you're going to be talking about tonight later on in your agenda. Chapters are going to be hosting their own 30 by 30 awareness sessions and how the task force is going to support them in that. And then some next steps for 2020, 2021. And then after I'm done, Bob's going to do a quick little overview on why this 30 by 30 is a very important licensing initiative. So equity and engineering, why is that important? I think Marisa's already touched on it in many ways in her opening address. Obviously, equity is important. It ensures the outcome for engineering is beneficial to all. So of course, women make up 50% of the population. We want to make sure that we are taking that into consideration when we're practicing engineering. As was mentioned as well, women are not a diversity group. We're actually half the population. And within half that population, there is diversity. So because we're not tapping into 50% of the population, we're not tapping into the full talent pool, and therefore not serving really fully the public's best interests. And the chronic underrepresentation also continues to portray our profession unfavorably to the public. There are articles, people send them to me, but there are articles fairly recently in the Globe and Mail that ask questions like, where are the women? Where are the women in the engineering profession? So we don't look so good to the public when we still have the kind of numbers that we have in our profession, especially when you look at law and medicine, other licensed professions. They're already close to, if they haven't already attained gender parity. Unfortunately, the last bullet, progress, it has been slow. It's been very slow. And so I'll share with you, and Marisa's also mentioned it as well, some of the numbers and how slow it's been. So this is from 2018. That's our baseline year where we're going to start to collect our information or metrics from. Marisa shared with you 2019. The needle hasn't moved, obviously, very much in 1 year. It actually hasn't really moved at all. So nationally, it was 18.1% of newly licensed engineers were women, and in Ontario, it was 17.9%. And so I don't recall exactly the number. I think it's about 18% for 2019 in Ontario. So really, it hasn't moved. And the important thing at the bottom is the challenge, really, in that the percentage has stagnated for the past 5 years. So really, there hasn't been any movement. So what to do about it? Some action has to take place. Obviously, what we've been doing in the past isn't working because we're not moving that needle. So there was a recognition at Engineers Canada that there was a pressing need to address this inequity. And in 2011, Engineers Canada launched the 30 by 30, and the 30 by 30 is it is a very bold initiative to increase the number of newly licensed engineers who are women to 30% by the year 2030. Why does 30% make a difference? Why that number? It's the critical mass at which you reach a tipping point where an underrepresented group does not feel that they are marginalized. So it's a very important number to hit 30%. And in 2018, Engineers Canada, further reinforced their commitment to 30 by 30, in that it's not just about making sure that newly licensed engineers are 30%, but that really the profession retains these women, and that engineers are given the proper professional development to succeed in their careers. So there's a further commitment, not just the recruitment, but also retention and professional development. And so I think many of you have already seen this slide already, but a few of you may not have. The pathway to licensure is actually quite long, and it starts obviously with getting young girls interested in the maths and sciences from kindergarten, grade 8, all the way through high school. So they have their prerequisites to apply for engineering. They become an engineering student, and then they actually get through the program at the universities. They graduate, they have to go through obviously an EIT type step in getting the requisite experience requirements. And then with all of that, hopefully they get their license. And then once they get their license, they obviously have to continue to expand in their careers and getting more and more experience. And then eventually they will end up as an engineering leader. So it's quite a pathway to get all the way up to leading in the profession. And also in this chart, you can see internationally educated engineering, women engineers also feed into it. So they likewise have to make sure their academic requirements meet meet the PEO's licensing requirements, and then also have to get that requisite experience as well. So it's quite a pathway, and where in this pathway should PEO play a role? And so you see a circle on there, a blue circle. That is really where PEO's mandate as a regulator resides within that circle. So we're interested in making sure that women are getting into universities or being recruited by the universities and getting their academic requirements that they need, and that employers are recruiting them and giving them their experience requirements, and so that they meet the requirements for licensure. So that's really where PEO as a regulator is focused. And of course, within that, what's PEO's licensing model and licensing processes, and how are they welcoming to women? So that's really where our task force, the PEO's 30 by 30 task force, is focused on that blue circle. Engineers Canada expanded their strategic priorities, SP3, that's on there, that's the red circle. And so they're also looking at the professional development and advancement of women, retention and advancement of women in the profession. So it goes a little bit further. But PEO is focused on the blue part, and there are others like the universities and other groups that are focused on the downstream piece and making sure that there's young girls and high school students, women high school students that are interested in pursuing engineering. And one of those is ENWI that Marisa talked about earlier. ENWI is a major initiative from universities to get young girls interested in maths and sciences. So that's really where PEO is going to be focused, is on that blue part. Next slide. And so along that pathway to licensure, there are key stakeholder groups: universities who provide the academic requirements, engineering employers who provide the experience requirements, and PEO, of course, as the regulator who actually oversees and issues licenses. And then, of course, a key stakeholder group is the women themselves, the women engineering graduates, both domestically and internationally educated. So those are the stakeholders that our task force focused on. We stay within the blue circle and we focus on those key stakeholder groups. One of the key success factors going forward will be that this 30 by 30 is not seen as just a women's issue, a women in engineering type issue, but really it should be an issue of concern for the entire engineering profession, both men and women. And so our, whoops, I think, can you guys see me? I just lost my camera. I hope you can see me. Just a sec, I don't think I'm on camera. Oh, my video, there, you guys can see me again, I think. Good, my computer just, it just went to sleep on me for a second. And so I think that's reflected in the task force where we have 50% men and 50% women. And so that's a really positive sign going forward. And we have a lot of men that are finding this of importance and making sure our profession reflects society. So PEO has developed its action plan for Ontario, and that action plan was tailored to the various stakeholder groups that I just covered off in the previous slide. And so we did have, as Marisa said, awareness sessions and action planning sessions with those stakeholder groups, including the chapters. And from that, we proposed some actions that they could take to support women getting their license along the pathway to licensure. So more specifically for tonight, I just wanted to cover off what can chapters do. And here's a list of some things that certainly the chapters have been involved in and can continue to be involved in. One that I really want to focus in on, that's been bolded there, is a licensing assistance program. That's going to be a very important program to facilitate when women engineering graduates graduate from university, or if they're internationally educated, the chapters can play a role to make sure that they are on track, you know, with their, hopefully they get employment opportunities, but that you help support them in the licensing process and help navigate them towards licensure. Tracy Karuna is our staff advisor to the 30 by 30 task force, and she is also the manager of this program. So that's very convenient, and Tracy will be working with you and the chapters going forward even more so than she has in the past to make sure that we really focus in on that licensing assistance program. It's going to be a really critical factor for success. And some of the smaller chapters can also benefit from the larger chapters that might have a more mature model that you're using. You have it set up a little bit more robustly with more volunteers, and they may not have the same number of volunteers. So if you could help out some of the smaller chapters, that would also be a really good step forward. And now that we have this lovely Zoom and this virtual platform we can work from, geography and distance won't be as much of an issue. The last bullet there as well is very important. Establishing those relationships. Chapters can play a big role establishing relationships with the universities and the engineering employers. And tonight we're going to focus a little bit more on those engineering employers. It's one of the stakeholder groups that we need to develop and strengthen our relationships with. We're still not quite, and we're hoping that the chapters can play a big role in reaching out to your engineering employers within your geographical area, and encouraging them to support and get on board with the 30 by 30 and recruit women engineering graduates and internationally educated women engineers so that we can get them the experience requirements that they need to get their license. So this slide here, you know, you can do all the actions you want, but you also have to measure your success. So what gets measured gets done. What's really important here, what's been highlighted, is the word established. When we started this process, the task force about 2 years ago, we had proposed metrics. I'm happy to say tonight that those metrics are now established. And not only have they been established, they've also been formally tabled with PEO Council last November. And it's going to continue for the next 10 years to 2030 annually at the November Council meeting. where, each year we measure our progress and how we're doing. And last year, the baseline year was the metrics for 2018. And with all of these metrics, we're just striving towards that 30% goal. So obviously the first one that's highlighted there is, these are licensing metrics. That first one is the most important one, really. That's the overarching 30 by 30 metric. What's the percentage of newly licensed engineers who are women? So in 2018, baseline was 17.9%. So obviously we have a ways to go until we reach 30%. And I think with all these interventions, I'm optimistic we can get there faster than 2030 if we really put our minds to it and our actions. And then you can read there's other metrics that we're actually measuring. They look at the licensing, applying for licensure, obtaining licensure, EITs who are female, how many women are being called into the experience requirements interviews. We want to make sure there's no bias, unconscious bias in the actual licensing process. This is a very important bullet for the chapters. How many EITs are participating in the LAP program who are female, and how many out of that program, the LAP program, actually go on to obtain licensure. So it's kind of a measure of the efficacy of your LAP program. So that's the metrics we're looking at for licensing. And then the next slide, these are as well internal metrics. So within the actual organization of PEO, what percentage of staff are women? What percentage of staff leadership are women? Volunteer leadership, which applies to the chapters. How many women are heading up your task force or on your executive, or even members of your chapter? And then also council. How many counselors are women? So it's kind of hard to go out and talk to employers and other organizations and ask them to participate in the 30 by 30 if PEO isn't also doing its part and leading by example. So these metrics will help PEO to gauge the progress that as an organization it is making. And the licensing process, as much as possible, is free of any gender bias. So more specifically then, the chapters can also take those actions like that previous slide I just showed you and start to measure your own progress. And these metrics will support and feed into the metrics that I just covered for the overall PEO metrics. So what percentage of women engineering graduates and internationally educated women engineers are participating in your LAP program and actually obtain their license? This is an extremely important one. What percentage of women are members of your chapters, and how many are in your leadership positions? So if you want to track those locally at your chapters, it'll roll up into the broader PEO metrics. So you have quite a role to play at the chapter level in helping PEO attain the 30 by 30. So in addition to holding these sessions that we had, awareness and action planning sessions, we also made the ask to these external stakeholders if they would be willing to take on the next step of actually becoming a 30 by 30 champion for their organization. And to be a champion, we had to put some parameters around that. That would be to take action, an action plan of some sort and actions. And many engineering employers already have action plans in place, and so that would count towards the 30 by 30. And then also, would they be willing to track the indicators, have some metrics to track their progress? So those are the two criteria that we have put out there in terms of being considered a champion. Certainly we have more work to do. We've only introduced the concept, but we're starting to get some interest from the employers, and some employers are starting to express a willingness to become a champion and starting to round up their metrics. So that's a positive sign. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit more. This session is really to prepare you for your East Central region, which is made up of several chapters. What you can do, one major thing you can do is to host your own 30 by 30 session. So in the next slide, and I'll cover that off. So what does that mean? The task force, as we said before, we've held awareness sessions and action planning sessions just before people in the task force for stakeholders throughout Ontario. We got a really good start to launching the 30 by 30, but by no means are we finished yet. So what we thought would be a good idea, because you're such a great army, I call you a small army of volunteers at the chapter level. Whoops, I lost my thing. Good. At the chapter level, that you would take what the task force has done and host your own awareness sessions with your own network of employers and universities. And so we kind of split it up geographically: Southwestern, Western, Northern, Eastern GTA, Ottawa. So some of the thoughts we had, East Central region would fall certainly within the GTA. And then also it would involve you inviting or engaging your stakeholder groups, the universities, employers, women engineers within your areas. And the task force would support you on hosting these events. We have had chapter leads identified for the geographical areas, and the task force has already had meetings with the chapter leads. What came out of the meeting is what we're having tonight, this session we're having with East Central Region. So your chapter leadership wanted to make sure you understood a little bit about the 30 by 30 so that you could get more engaged and support your chapters within this region, hosting your own 30 by 30 awareness session. As I said before, one of the stakeholder groups we really need to focus on are the employers. It's kind of a group that has not been engaged to the degree that they perhaps should have been, and they play a very important role, a vital role, with respect to licensure and making sure that women have the necessary experience requirements to get their license. And so when you're setting up your awareness sessions, really focusing on the employers will be key. Next slide. So some of the proposed steps for this year and next year. COVID has certainly thrown us a curveball, which is why we have to have our session virtually tonight. We're getting good at it, but it certainly isn't a substitute for having a face-to-face session. But hopefully in the next year, I put Q2, Q3. Don't know when exactly that'll happen because it depends on the state of COVID and if we have an ability to meet face-to-face. But ideally, that would be the best to host it, not a virtual hosting, but more of a face-to-face hosting. So the chapter hosted sessions would likely take place sometime in 2021. Right now, the task force is trying to get formal endorsements from stakeholders, especially the engineering employers. And in the following year, it's going to be, we'll pass the baton on to PEO chapters to try to continue to build on what the task force has done and add more employers as champions. We're also on an annual basis, in addition to reporting to PEO Council the metrics every year, we're also looking to having an annual check-in with all the stakeholder groups on the progress we're making on 30 by 30. So we're having our inaugural one September 28th of this year, and because of COVID, it's going to be a virtual, and hopefully next year we can host an in-person one. But PEO staff will be running that annually for the next 10 years, and hopefully we keep building and building on our stakeholders and really get the momentum going and really collectively move that needle. What comes out of those annual check-ins, which are tracking our metrics, will feed into the reporting to PEO Council on an annual basis. So we started last year with 2018 baseline metrics, and this year we're going to add in 2019 and just see how we're doing. And so that will be happening on an annual basis every November. Okay, next slide. So if you want to stay in touch, there's some links there for you, but if you want to stay in touch and you want to reach out to the task force, Tracy Carolina is our staff advisor to our task force, and that's her contact information. And she's also the manager for the, I think it's the IT program and also the LAP program. So that's her day job, and she can certainly support you in really bolstering your LAP program. So with that, I'm now going to hand the podium over to Bob, my fellow task force member, and he's just going to quickly go through a little bit on why why the 30 by 30 is a licensing initiative.
Okay. All right. Let's continue on. Again, thank you for spending some time on this incredible initiative that I think we can make some real success. I know there's a comment, is 30 by 30 really a bold initiative? Shouldn't 50% be? But hey, we gotta have those steps first. Anyway, so I'm going to be brief. Thankfully, President Sterling did talk a little bit about what I was going to talk about, so that's good. Why is this a licensing initiative? So this manifesto she mentioned, if we go to the next slide. Do I have access? Do I have control? Okay. Well, a lot of people sort of question whether or not, we as a regulator really should be getting into this, what's seen as as really an advocacy, someone would say, or beyond the scope of purely regulation. But I think the key for us here is, as we say here, PEO and all of us here are not just a regulator of professional engineering. We're a self-governing regulator. So we've been granted that privilege by the people of Ontario. And they trust us to regulate the profession on their behalf. And we've been granted this as a privilege and an obligation. And we have to respect that trust society has given us to administer our own regulation. Unfortunately, there's many examples where when that trust breaks down, society through the elected officials alters the government's framework and imposes more direct control over the affairs of the regulator. We've seen this happen in Quebec, where the Charbonneau inquiry into the profession really brought a lot of scrutiny from the government, and in Quebec, they're still seeing the effects of that. In BC, the Poly Dam burst also has brought a lot of scrutiny into the profession. So we have to make sure that we are regulating for the best in the interests and in the trust of society. And as President Sterling said, this initiative speaks to that trust between society and regulator. So she did cover that a little bit. So we'll go to the next slide, and then we'll just wrap up that part of it. And yeah, this speaks to that comment, shouldn't we be going to 50%? Well, it is a stopgap measure towards gender parity. But having this initiative, even in and of itself, it allows us the opportunity for that critical self-reflection, to look at the underlying reasons why a profession isn't attracting the best of the best. 50% of the population, the best, are not as reflected in our profession as it should be. And society would expect no less. So yes, fundamentally, it is a licensing initiative, and fundamentally, it speaks to the trust society through the government has entrusted on us to regulate the profession. So thanks. I know we're running a little behind, so I will happily turn it back on to the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Helen, for that very informative session on the 30 by 30 task force. So we're going to actually start with the breakout session now, the first breakout session. Before I explain what we're going to be doing in the breakout session, we just want to inform everyone to maintain an inclusive and open learning environment, listen respectfully with an ear to understanding others' views, allow everyone the chance to speak, and avoid put-downs. Next slide. So in your chat, there should be, I think, Sharon, do you want to send that link again, just in case some people didn't download it? These questions will be, sorry, so these questions will be sent in the link. So I'll go over the questions really quickly. So these questions will be discussed in the breakout session. Each of you will be separated into breakout rooms. When Sharon sends out the notification, there'll be a pop-up box, just click OK, and you'll be sent into your rooms. And then these questions are just little guides throughout your conversation in these breakout rooms. So the first question is, why is a 30 by 30 initiative important? So why is gender parity important in our profession / in the workplace? How does gender diversity contribute to the outcome of projects? Does the perception of that field, does the perception that a field is gender biased, not just that it is gendered, shape the public's view of it? How likely is an occupation / field's gender bias or gender ratio influence a person's interest in that occupation / field? So once you guys have discussed through these questions, there's a form takeaway that's also in that link that's provided on the chat bar. If you click on that, you'll be able to enter your answers in there with your answers. So I think, Sharon, you want to set up that breakout room?
It's all set up, so I'm just gonna click the button and everyone's good to go. But before I put everyone in session, does everyone have make sure you have the PDF file downloaded before you go into the session. So it's now the link is dragged into the box. So as long as one of the breakout session members has it, you should be good. All right, back to you, Karthika.
Yep. So if you have any technical questions, there's the ask for help question within each of the breakout rooms, and one of us will jump in and help you out. Sounds good?
Okay, opening the breakout rooms now.
So thank you for everyone for participating in that. I hope you guys were able to get some takeaway from that breakout session. While Sharon is doing this, we're going to introduce the next speaker, and Nanda's going to come in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nanda Lewin. I'm one of the organizers for 30 by 30 East Central. Today's keynote speaker is a graduate of electrical engineering from Queen's University, and she's had an outstanding career at Hydro One. She was an engineer, and she's had project management positions at Hydro One, and she's currently the senior IT security specialist at Hydro One. So we're really honored to have her. But most importantly, she is the founder and president of Camp Engies, a camp dedicated to promoting engineering to girls from grades 5 to 8. And the camp has grown extraordinarily. It's 78 girls in the first year to 145 girls the next year. She founded it only in 2018, so that was only 2 years ago, and it's grown tremendously. And it's just such a pleasure to have her. And 2 fun facts about her. She and she's going to kill me for this, but when she was young, she was actually a competitive dancer. Apparently, I found that out just this afternoon. And not only that, she's really going to kill me for this. She's actually a big fan of the Spice Girls. So she was, and she still is. And over the last few months, we've become really good friends, and I'm so honored and I'm so glad and so privileged that she's with us today. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Cassondra Fonseca. Cassondra, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Nanda, for that great introduction. I do love the Spice Girls.
Yes.
But keep going. So in Canada, the P.Eng designation represents the highest standard of engineering knowledge, experience, and professionalism. Currently, less than 1 in 9 women are professional engineering license holders. By this definition, that makes me a minority, a woman with a P.Eng license. I joined Hydro One in 2010, and I know you're all great at math. That means I've worked for over 10 years, and some of you are smiling or laughing, knowing that millennials tend to bounce around. That's not me. I started my career off in protection design and worked there for almost 7 years. I then worked as a project engineer for a few years before recently transitioning, mid-pandemic nonetheless, to cybersecurity. Hydro One has been extremely supportive throughout my career and journey as an engineer. I'd like to take a moment to highlight 2 great external facing initiatives that I'm a part of and that are currently underway. So the first is our Women in Engineering partnership with 4 different universities. It's called We Made It. So we fund outreach and we provide networking opportunities for girls in elementary school, high school, and universities. Secondly, we have a Women in Engineering award, which your daughters, or maybe even some of you, can apply to, where we award $5,000 and a work term. Actually, I'll just paste it in the chat right now. Everyone can see that. Just click that link. And the deadline is November 1st, so it's coming up. So I encourage you or your daughters or friends and families to apply. So throughout my career, I volunteered as a Hydro One ambassador for a plethora of events, conferences, Women in Engineering conferences, roundtable discussions, various events. I even judged at the Ontario Engineering Competition. Unfortunately, I noticed that the percentage of undergraduate women in engineering remains stagnant, around 20%. Next slide. Next slide. I thought to myself, how can I change this statistic and foster an engaging yet safe space? I founded Camp Engies, as you can see in the slide, a 2-day, 1-night experience to promote engineering to young girls with the intention of increasing the percentage of women in engineering. We charge a nominal fee for majority of the families, and we fully subsidize the cost for new immigrants from Nigeria, Big Brother, Big Sister girls, and this year First Nation girls. This allows our girls to connect with like-minded individuals and make lifelong friends. Just keep it at that point. Our girls are also able to connect everyday life to engineering. So as you can see in this slide, Dyson was one of our sponsors. They sent vacuums and hand dryers. So now hopefully when the girls use en routes or public restrooms or they're vacuuming, they think of us and engineering. Some of the York Region chapter members may have seen our ice cream activity that would, or hopefully, inspire our future Chem Engies. Next slide. This year, we successfully pivoted to a virtual platform. We manually assembled these Camp Engies toolkits packed with engineering fun and activities, and the girls were able to enjoy these hands-on activities in the comfort of their own home. So why is Camp Engies different than other STEM camps? Girls tend to see and interact with the typical professionals such as doctors, teachers, and lawyers. Camp Engies is hosted by a team of successful and well-rounded women in engineering who come from different experiences, background, and have different stories. It makes us relatable. We connect our campers to these role models that will support them throughout their lifetime. We also choose engineering speakers that come from a variety of different career paths. So for example, we have business owners, we have doctorates, and we even have celebrities. Weaving together our Engies' first potential overnight experience with incredible role models and engineering knowledge to form a beautiful and unique tapestry. With this said, I am happy to see that the percentage of women in engineering as undergraduates has finally increased to 24.4%. However, we still have a long way to go. As Helen said, women and girls represent half of the world and therefore half of its potential. So personally, I think that for 30 by 30 to occur, we require 4 stages, and I think that Marisa, Helen, Bob, and the task force would agree with me. Grassroots marketing, which I previously spoke to, recruitment, support, and finally retention. So 30 by 30 and what it means to me. As Marisa, Helen, and Bob stated, 30% is the critical mass needed for meaningful change. Similarly, the government of Canada and even the Oscars are using a 30% target. So let's gauge some interaction here. So let me ask you this. How many of you that identify as a woman notice that you're the only woman in the room or on site? So maybe you can just send the thumbs up. I'm not sure if I can see that or the host can see that. Or raise your hand. The host will have to tell me.
Oh, unfortunately, we didn't have the emojis, like the reactions enabled for this presentation.
Oh, okay. So maybe they can raise their hand on the right panel or type. Okay. And then how many of you that identify as a man notice you're the only man in the room or on site? So I'm sure a lot less. So today, gender inequality persists everywhere and stagnates social progress. Women continue to be underrepresented at all levels. Next slide, please. So what can you do as an employee, leader, or business owner? Have your organization endorse the 30 by 30 goal. Get the basics right. Set targets, collect data, have accountability. Nominate a champion to promote 30 by 30. From my perspective, this would require a top-down approach, so executives and senior management. As a part of the plan, define your company's strengths and weaknesses in recruiting and supporting diverse talent. So ensure that hiring and promotions are fair. Foster a respectful culture. Don't normalize microaggressions. And offer the employees the flexibility to fit work into their lives, especially for mothers. COVID-19 has the potential to cause a major setback to gender equality. According to mencare.org, women's household duties and domestic work have increased significantly due to COVID. Next slide. Men, we need your support. I think Rob is actually at this session. You can work alongside women and girls to achieve gender equality and embrace healthy interactions. I want to reassure you that we're not trying to alienate you. Men are a crucial part of the conversation. You can be an ally and a champion. Just ask. The current climate of race issues across North America and beyond have highlighted the urgency for equitable representation in professions for persons of color. After 2030, I would love to see the 30 by 30 initiative extend to a subcategory. I would love to see 30% of licensed engineers consist of women of color. We should commit to a diverse workforce that is reflective of Canadian society. Our code of ethics states that we must act at all times with fairness and loyalty, fidelity to public needs, and devotion to high ideals of personal honor and professional integrity. Until we have equity in women's representation as professional engineers, we have not achieved success as a profession. So, to all my fellow professional engineers, this is your call to action. Become a champion and help us achieve 30 by 30. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassondra, for your wonderful address. And my mistake, the reactions actually do work. I just didn't realize that. Thank you so much for your wonderful remarks and the information about your contributions to Camp Engies, because it segues perfectly onto our next self-guided breakout session. So our session number 2, if we can go on to the next slide. So the second question is, how does this issue or 30 by 30 initiative impact you? How do you think, some guiding questions are, how do you think that the engineering profession is perceived? Do you think that it is gender biased? And what practical consequences does that manifest itself within the workplace? What do you feel are the greatest hurdles women face in engineering? How can PEO work towards relieving some of these stresses? And lastly, how have you observed the leaky pipeline in your workplace or place of education? Just a reminder, these sessions are self-guided, so don't need to wait for a facilitator. You can just go at it, and you can share your takeaways here. The questions PDF link as well as this takeaway link should be pasted already in the chat. So welcome back, everyone. That was the last of our 2 breakout sessions. We hope you had a really good discussion. Again, I pasted the takeaways form into the chat. So, and this is completely optional. If you really want to, we really would love to see what you have taken away from the session in each of your groups. So just enter them there. We are now moving on to our Q&A session. Helen Wojcinski, from who is the chair of the 30 by 30 task force, is around here to answer some questions. Cassondra, our keynote speaker, is also here too. So if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat, and our tech expert, Mirage, we will feed that to the respective speakers, time depending. Please enter them in the chat. Don't use the voice command because there are a lot of people within this session. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Mirage, who will say the first question.
Perfect. Yeah, so the first question just came in pretty quickly. How do you think that the engineering profession is perceived? Do you think that it is gender biased? What particular consequences within the workplace does this manifest? So I'd say, Helen or Cassondra, either one of you, it'd be great to get your thoughts.
So is that a question? Sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Did you want me to respond to that?
Yep, either one of you would be great.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of questions within the question, but generally I don't think engineering is perceived positively as a result of our gender inequity. And it comes through in articles, like I said in the presentation, in the Globe and Mail, for instance, where are the women? I don't think it portrays us very favorably, and it's something that we really have to get a handle on. I think that 30% is an extremely important number. I think there's a lot of progress that's been made. Certainly, when I got my license back in 1989, which is over 30 years ago, it was pretty stark, to say the least. I worked out in highway construction. I think it's gotten better, but I get disheartened when I hear from some of the women that I've spoken to. They're still experiencing similar things 30 years later. And I think the fact that we have, we were talking about newly licensed being about 18%. In terms of the actual practice, like, P.Engs that are actually practicing or have a P.Eng, it's only about 12% in Ontario. And so, to keep things in perspective, I got my license in 1989. It was about 2% women. Fast forward to today, which is over 30 years later, it's only about 12% who actually have their P.Eng. And that is, what do you think? I mean, I think it looks terrible. I think we look terrible to the public, and I think it's unacceptable. And I don't think we should accept that as a profession. And so we have a lot of work to do. We've got to, I think what's really going to make a difference is getting men on board and recognizing this isn't just a women engineering issue. And I'm really heartened by how many men are stepping up to the plate and even on this call today. So that's my view. I mean, the numbers tell the story. That's how I see it. And yeah, the public's wondering what the heck's going on and why we can't seem to resolve this. Don't know if Cassondra wants to add to what I've said.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, Helen. we have to start at the grassroots and then obviously support and retain these women throughout the profession and throughout their first years working as an engineer, and really promote getting licensed and the benefits behind it as well.
And I think it's the grassroots, but I also really, really believe it's the leadership and companies and the leadership in the profession that have to step up and do their part. I've been around a long time. I've been involved with women engineering this issue since I graduated. I joined PEO, it was under PEO at the time, WEAC, now under OSPI. I joined that committee back in 1990, which is 30 years ago, still talking about the same topic. It's very boring. So, you know, we really have to get the leadership on board and say it's not acceptable. And I'm starting to see that. So that, as I said before, I think that's heartening. But it can't just be women talking to women about the issue. We just won't, we're not moving the needle with that. And so the fact that our registrar is looking at the licensing process, the licensing model, is interested in you know, removing any gender biases from that, I think is like a major step forward. And PEO Council unanimously endorsed the 30 by 30 in 2017. So those are really positive steps forward. But the numbers still tell the story. We have a lot of work to do.
And that touches on the one of the other questions that came up, more around the fee structure, but I think that's more of a PEO staff, possibly registrar question. But I think the larger thought that came out of here was how is PEO addressing some of the obstacles and barriers to really anybody getting their P.Eng, and I think you've spoken to that as well. So thank you, Helen. The other question that came up was, sorry, I'm just scrolling through. Can anyone become a 30 by 30 champion, and what exactly does that entail and the steps to do that?
So anybody could certainly champion the 30 by 30, absolutely. But the formal 30 by 30 champion is directed more at the stakeholders, the stakeholder groups, and that would be the universities and the employers. And so I am the PEO 30 by 30 champion for PEO at Engineers Canada. All the regulators have a 30 by 30 champion, and the universities have, they're quite advanced actually. They have quite a few academic 30 by 30 champions, both academic and administrative. Employers is sort of the last nut that we have to crack. And so I said in the presentation, we're trying to really engage the employers. They play a vital role in that experience requirement. So if they're not recruiting women, not retaining women, not giving them the projects and the opportunities to develop their engineering skills necessary for licensure, they're not going to get licensed. And so it's a really, really important stakeholder group. And so our task force coined the phrase a PEO champion, employers champion, 30 by 30 champion. And to be a 30 by 30 champion from our task force perspective is that the employer has some actions, an action plan, or is taking some actions towards 30 by 30. So not just, this is a great initiative, lip service, actually committed to doing something about it within their organization. And we have provided them with, through the sessions that we've had, we provided them with best practice examples from the Ministry of Transportation. They have an excellent engineering development program. Their numbers are 50%. They're getting 50% recruitment, or applicants, 50% recruitment. Over 90% or plus are getting their license at the end of their 4-year EDP program. And then about at least 30% are in leadership positions. And their chief engineer, the ADM, for I think the highway division at MTO, is a woman as well, and she was our keynote speaker. So we gave the employers an example of what can be done in terms of the program and how they can recruit and get the right candidates by, even just as Marisa said, the postings and the language they're using and how they're recruiting, how they're evaluating competencies, etc. They have a winning formula, so we shared that with the employers. And then also we had a keynote speaker at our action planning session, Dr. Sonia Kang from the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management. She is the INSERC chair for equity and diversity for Canada. She was fantastic. So all her research and best practices for employers. So we shared those as tools for employers. So from that, hopefully they can develop some actions and take action plans and actions. And then also we have, like we have for you with the chapters, we also had proposed metrics for them as well. How many women are you recruiting? Women engineering graduates are you recruiting in your organization? How many of them actually go on to obtain their license? And then how many women do you have in leadership roles in your organizations as role models, leadership positions? So we gave them some tools, and we made some parameters around what it means to be a champion. So we tried to formalize that so we wouldn't end up with just people that like the lip service. We want to actually move that needle.
Yeah, that's great. And then another question came up. How do you consider the role of female professors and instructors at higher education institutions in the field of engineering in the 30 by 30 action plan?
So that's an excellent question. Bob's fallen off the call because he is a prof, so he'd be perfect to answer that. But I think, again, Marisa mentioned that we have reached out, our task force has reached out to the deans of Ontario, the engineering deans of Ontario. We've met with them twice. We presented what we're doing through PEO and what their role can be. And certainly we had also sessions with the universities as well, awareness action planning sessions. And at those sessions, that would be one of their metrics. And it's a metric that PEO Council is seeing every year at their November meeting. How many women students are you enrolling in engineering, like recruiting into the engineering program? That's one of the metrics. How many? I'm going from memory here. How many? It's on your presentation. It's not in this one. Because I couldn't put everything into this presentation. The universities have as well how many actually graduate. I think that might be the other metric, and the other one is how many women do you have in faculty in engineering, in your engineering faculty. So that is one of the metrics, and so the universities are aware of it. A lot of them are doing extremely well, actually. My alma mater, U of T, they're doing extremely well with bringing on women students. It's about first year class, 30, 40, it was 40% now, I think it's down about 30, but it's really high, they're at 30%. But in general, one area that they need to work on is women in faculty. And I think in Ontario, it's about 18%. So they've got their work cut out for them. But that was highlighted to the deans, they're aware of it. And they're trying to take some measures to bring those numbers up. So they're really advanced, they're really progressive in where they are with the 30 by 30.
I know there are quite a few questions still in the chat, and we are running out of time. So I will encourage everybody to definitely reach out and contact Tracy if you have any more questions about the 30 by 30 task force. Definitely check out some of these resources. Sharon, will we be sharing this deck out? How are we sharing this out to everybody?
Yes, we will be the questions or the recording.
Both decks that were shared today.
I think with the permission of the speakers, yes, but we need to get that from them first.
Yeah, so we'll ensure as a takeaway that everybody on the team and on this call has the right resources of where they can go to ask any other questions about the 30 by 30 initiative. Definitely take down Tracy's email as well for any more information on the task force. I do apologize we weren't able to get through all of the questions. Some of them are really, really great. So definitely save those up and send them over to the task force. And thank you so much, Helen, and thank you, Cassondra.
No worries. Do you still need me to stay on the call, or do you want me to drop off then? I'm more than the questions. You can send them over through Tracy to us, and we can get some answers back. That's totally fine, and I'm fine with you sharing the presentation and the recording. The task force, the more that we get the word out, the better.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Helen.
All right. So do you want me to stick around or do you want me to fall off the call? I can stay on. I've got a few more minutes. No worries.
Perfect. All right. Back to you, Sharon.
Perfect. I'm actually going to hand the floor off to Marcia, who will close out the event today. Marcia, over to you.
Thank you, Sharon. Hi, my name is Marcia Lim. I'm PEO York Chapter's Diversity and Inclusion WIE Director. I'd like to introduce the next 30 by 30 session, which is employer engagement. Employers play a key role in the pathway to licensure. As engineers in training gain their experience in becoming professional engineers under the guidance of engineering mentors within the workplace. Employers' actions as part of 30 by 30 will focus on the recruitment, professional development, and retention of women in engineering. PEO has and will continue to establish and track 30 by 30 metrics and report them annually to PEO senior management and the board of directors. Employer engagement webinar is planned for later this year, and its success depends on participation of employers. We will be calling upon PEO members to help in reaching leaders in engineering companies to onboard with objectives of 30 by 30. It's so important for 30 by 30 to engage with decision makers in engineering organizations for sustainable, proactive actions for equity of women in engineering. Please stay tuned for additional information to come in the following weeks. Next slide. Feedback. We'd love your feedback and would appreciate if you take our quick survey to help us make our events better. The link to the survey is on the page and also available in your PDF packets you've downloaded. Lastly, thank you. With much gratitude, thank you to MPY and our speakers, Marisa, Helen, Bob, and Cassondra, for your time and championing 30 by 30. A big thank you to all of the organizing committee. Thank you to all who are in attendance tonight. We hope this event has encouraged you to participate with PEO chapters and be part of 30 by 30 initiative. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar and look forward to further participation in 30 by 30 initiatives. Thank you. With that, this webinar is closed.
Great, thank you everyone. We actually still have 5 minutes so before our planned closing time. So if we could answer one more of the questions that was put in the chat, if Helen is okay with that. Helen?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was reading the questions actually. I was reading those questions actually. Sorry, I gotta look at my camera again. There we go. It's finicky. Yeah, I was reading the questions, so they're really good questions. I'll let the moderator pick one for me.
Mirage though seems to be by his video. Oh wait, oh you're there. Okay.
I'm here.
Great.
I was just launching the poll. Give me
Perfect.
1 second. Let me scroll up from all these goodbyes. What can we learn from other professions that have achieved gender parity? Alternatively, what are female-dominated professions, i.e. nursing, doing in this regard? A really interesting question.
I've been asked that question before. It's an excellent question, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know, other than I haven't formally researched that or looked into that per se, but I did anecdotally talk to the law profession and some in the law profession, and they said that they've actually just started it sooner than PEO. They got serious about it sooner than the engineering profession. But I've also heard that medicine, although it has 50% or so, there tends to be more women in pediatrics and family medicine, and maybe less in the surgery areas and the specialties. So they still have some gender issues to work through, but I think that they just started earlier and got serious about it. I know there's one academic 30 by 30 champion at one of the universities who's done some research on it. I can reach out if someone's really interested in that. I can reach out to the staff person at Engineers Canada and follow up on that question for you and see if I can get something better than my answer.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great, because it seems to be a bit of a trend. There was also another comment saying, what are some of the strategies that have worked in some of the other STEM fields that have managed to increase their diversity numbers much more than when it comes to the engineering fields?
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing. I think they just got at it sooner. They hit that critical mass as kind of a tipping point. If you get over 30%, then when young women can see themselves in the profession, it's really important for them to see role models and see a path, a career path. And you got to get to that 30% in order to realize that. I also think that the sort of the STEM engineering fields are sort of historically portrayed as a male-dominated field. Maybe it's not. But one piece of research I can add to this very quickly is there was a study that was done. I read that study. It was done by the University of Guelph, and Bob Dony would be aware of it. It was Mary Wells, who's the Dean of Engineering at the time, and Valerie Davidson, who's also been heavily involved with women engineering issues for her entire career. They wrote a paper on it about physics in high school, and how women were young women, high school students were not taking physics, which is a prerequisite for engineering. And what they found is that if it's not presented in a way that has a connection with society and a social impact, if it's all about the pointiness of the science and the math, it's not attractive to women. So they're finding in the faculties of engineering, the traditional disciplines of engineering, civil, mechanical, electrical, the numbers are the largest, the numbers of students, but the percentage of women is the smallest. Whereas the emerging disciplines like sustainability, biomedical, etc., the numbers are small, numbers of students, but it's about 50% women in those fields. And so some of it is the way that those traditional disciplines are being portrayed. If you make it really, quite frankly, mathy and sciencey and boring, and they don't see the connection with the impact on society, then women aren't attracted to it. And so the deans are aware of that, and they know they have to position those disciplines better and make them, make that connection for the women students.
Great. This question, I guess maybe we can pose this to Cassondra. Cassondra, in the workplace, and this is, I guess, a personal opinion question, do you feel like you're encouraged by men in the workplace, or the level of allyship in the workplace is high when working for a company or even on a project?
Yeah, as I said before, Hydro One has been extremely supportive. They've supported all the women engineers throughout their career, and that's why I think they retain us so well. I also wanted to add, to Helen's point, allyship is very important. So we have a lot of men advocating for real change in our company, and we also have a group called Women in Technology, Trades, and Engineering. So that kind of brings us all together. So we have each other to support and rely on and have those conversations, those difficult conversations throughout the past 10 years. So that's also important. Helen, did you want to add something to that?
I think your point, and we've already made it tonight, it can't be seen as a women engineering issue, and I think men stepping up is making a big difference. That this is really an issue that should be of importance to the entire profession. The fact you have men, visibly leading and caring about this issue within Hydro One, I think makes a big difference. And you can see your what I would call well, your 10 years in your career, but mid-career, starting a mid-career, and you know it's had an impact on you. And I think that's important. It speaks for itself, right?
Great. Well, thank you both once again. Thank you for the questions. Also, once again, if you guys need to reach out to the 30 by 30 task force, you've got Tracy's information, and I will give it back over to Sharon. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Since we will be sending out the slide deck for Helen's 30 by 30, everyone should have the email address to send these questions. With that, I'm glad to really bring this session to a close. We ended right on time. We had so much learning and so many speakers giving their remarks and information in the session. Thank you all for attending, and have a good night.